Okay, so we're back, you guys, and sorry about the technical difficulties. I think we've gotten it mostly sorted, um, but I already have my first caller. I won't go over what I said in the previous thing. Just watch the watch the podcast if you're just now joining for whatever reason. But I've got my first caller, and so I just want to jump right into the call. So let's just start out. What is your name and what is your true tea?
I'm going to go by Poppy. And I really appreciate the way you have been kind of exploring pretty privilege. I'm not entirely sure what your conclusion is yet, but I think that the way it is framed is also flawed. In that I think that there are universal markers of attractiveness, like across cultures, across times. They're usually like symmetry, generally like good facial development, proportionality, and, some sort of display of wealth, whether that be, through clothes or through, what's an achievable body type for you, etc. So I think those things are kind of, across cultures, across times. In humans, that's, there's markers of attractiveness versus Eurocentric beauty standards, which, are a result of white supremacy. And what's interesting, too, is that homogenous populations, and then particularly, I think this applies to especially Anglophone white people, so like America, England, Australia, they are not very good at recognizing attractiveness in other ethnic groups, while those ethnic groups that live live in the margins of those societies are able to evaluate, white standards of beauty. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think it's kind of like we can't do much about it, as like dating is like a naturally exclusive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels weird to me to frame it as, I think there's things we could do to solve it, like for jobs and sentencing, although I'm pro abolition of prisons, like doing blind interviews or, kind of anonymizing stuff like that to make things fair. But like, as far as like desirability and dating, I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really reached like a conclusion per se, and I almost don't even think this is a conversation that like requires a conclusion, really. Mm-hmm. I definitely think there's something to be said about people treating people who are attractive better, and that's like not a thing that I would necessarily deny. It's just more so that what that is not necessarily universal. Like, for sure there are situations where it is, people often consider symmetry to be attractive. I would agree with that. And expressions of wealth, I guess you could say, are also attractive in some ways. But I guess my biggest thing was it's hard to separate a lot of these things from other isms, and that's why it's kind of harder for me to pin down. Like, I'm a huge, disgusting K-pop person. And I know that, especially in Korea, beauty standards are fairly severe. And, if you're over a certain weight, you go from being a person who has the potential to be, entertaining in the way that most celebrities are, to literally just a comedic person, right? And that body, how large you'd have to be in Korea to be that kind of person is kind of what we would consider to be fairly average in America, frankly. It's not even, that big, really. So I think it's kind of, there's something to be said about it, but it's not necessarily like one thing or one way all the time. I think there are definitely overall things, and even in places that aren't centered in white supremacy, this thing exists. But I guess my big thing is, what's the use of describing it as privilege specifically, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think when we describe something as a privilege, we're trying to describe something that should be rectified. Whereas I think like all the other isms you're talking about, yes, we the goal is to level the playing field. The goal is to deconstruct those systems of oppression. Whereas attractiveness and choosing a mate and choosing a partner, I don't think we can level the playing field in that, as it's a very kind of individual experience in a way.
Yeah, but of course people's attractions in that way pour over into,
how they treat.
Yeah, and like so something I didn't talk about in the podcast that I really wish I had is that a lot of times when people quote benefit from quote pretty privilege, that also puts them in positions where they are going to experience some degree of harassment for it. Something that someone brought up in the comment section is, like in certain places in LA, you will see the same kind of girl getting hired to do like gallery jobs, for example. And I just know from my own, barely, exposed, experience to that world, that some of those girls end up being habitually harassed, by the people who own these businesses, who are definitely like hiring people along the lines of what they personally find attractive. And I guess it's hard for me to think of that as a privilege, being a person who people find attractive and then, treat a certain way for that reason. I guess it's like I'm very curious about what leveling the playing field would mean in that context, and if this is like, again, the same thing as privilege in the way that we talk about it, because obviously there's always going to be downsides to every kind of experience you have, but I don't know, this one doesn't necessarily stick to me. It doesn't seem like yes, there's something to be said about beauty standards, people appealing to them, and then people benefiting, I guess you could say, from them. But like privilege seems like a strange word, but I don't know, maybe that's just my own lack of, I guess, fully processing it.
Sorry.
Oh no, go on.
I was going to say it's like what you described is kind of like the different ways in which women will experience misogyny. Like if you are, conventionally attractive, you will get harassed, stalked, catcalled. And then if you're not, then you get people being very rude to you, especially men. You get people also harassing you, but in different ways. So and that's like the shared experience of misogyny. And so, yeah, I also kind of struggle calling that a privilege. There is something to say, with getting more likely to be hired for like a corporate job where maybe you're not getting harassed, like a waitress, or, more lenient sentencing. And I think that can be rectified with, again, just more anonymous processes. But like when people talk about, when people discuss how they aren't desired by the people that they do desire, or like by telling people, you need to include everyone in your dating pool all the time, it just kind of, I don't know, rubs me a little the wrong way too.
Well, because I think that, see, this is part of the thing, that issue I kind of have with it is like, because that shouldn't, especially when we talk about pretty privilege, we're kind of talking about, a lot of times hiring practices, right? Like for me, dating and who you hire are not connected, right? But some people might connect it in that way, right? And I hear we can't, necessarily include everyone in our dating because we're not attracted to everyone. And it's, most people have, preferences, I guess you could say. But I don't know, should that even come up in the conversation around hiring practices? Should that even be a thing that factors in? And you mentioned there being like people rectifying this, and I'm so curious exactly how that would work, because let's say you hire someone and it's a front-facing job, and that person is considered by a lot of people to not be attractive, right? What would then happen? like I don't know, like what does that really look like? Does that look like you hire someone, and then when you realize that they don't have anything to make up for it, like you fire them. I don't know. Like, how does that work? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know what would rectifying pretty privilege look like.
Exactly. I don't know how we are on time.
Oh, this is fine because this is our first one and I have not been looking at time. But I should be. Thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna but
I do, since you brought up the front-facing job, I am so sorry. That just made my thoughts go. What do you think of, like, you know, kind of the exclusivity and hiring based on attractiveness in regards to jobs like modeling and stuff like that? Like, is there not a place for jobs like that to exist and for people to be hired based off of their attractiveness? Is that always a bad thing?
Well, obviously it's not. I mean, if you're hiring someone to sell an item, you know, you're probably going to hire someone who would be considered attractive to sell said item because that's in the job, you know. And then, you know, on another layer, you're also hiring someone, you know, like I watched a really great video recently where it was kind of meta. There was an actual model scout watching I don't know the name of the company, but there's a company that they do all these videos against a white background and they line people up and talk about different things. But the video was like a modeling scout critiquing the appearance of people who wanted to be models. And
is this like a cut video or something?
Well, I think it was a cut video. Yeah, it's that kind of style. And the person in the cut video was being very, very friendly, very, very nice. And was kind of almost giving everyone a yes, you could be a model kind of answer. And then the video from the actual modeling scout was far more harsh because he was being realistic and wasn't necessarily trying to be, you know, liked and, you know, charismatic necessarily. He has to think realistically what would sell, what wouldn't. And, you know, there were people who the model scout of the video said, oh yes, you're attractive, you could probably, you know, make it, who definitely wouldn't in all reality. You know, but then one of the points that the guy in the cut video made was, you know, that he wouldn't necessarily always choose models based on what he personally found attractive. It was based more on what would sell. And I guess this kind of goes back to my thought, because oftentimes people who sell, you know, what would sell, what would survive in this capitalistic market does still often lean right back into all of those isms, right? Thinness, proximity to whiteness, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, there's definitely situations where that's not necessarily the case, where people hire more unique looking models to sell a certain thing. But oftentimes those situations are still rife with other isms. So I think it's not always a bad thing to hire people who are considered attractive, but I think a lot of people, what they respond to is the benefit people are given in jobs where that is completely irrelevant. You know, you don't need to be the most attractive person to be the girl sitting at the front of the gallery, right? You don't need to, but that might help sell, you know. And I guess it's like, so there's that, and that's true, but what do we do with that? I guess that's part of my question as well with this. What do we do with the discourse around pretty privilege, right? Where do we go once somebody acknowledges that they are pretty and that they gain privilege systemically, I guess, for being pretty? What do we then do with it? You know, where does it go?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I definitely think I spent a lot of time here with you, and thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing more of the conversation. I'm still also trying to figure that out, because I think there's definitely like a degree of objective attractiveness, and then the Eurocentric white supremacy kind of and oppressive standards on top of that as well. But
yeah, it's it's definitely a complex conversation. So I really appreciate you giving me your time. Really, I really do. So thank you.
so much. I'm just so sorry about all the technical
It's
issues.
okay. I'm glad we were finally able to make it work. You know, that's all I care about, is it worked out in the end.
For sure. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So now, let's see. I don't know. I picked a new person, or the next person, but I don't think I got a response from them. Let me see. Ban, please. Oh, why can't you ban this person? Ah! Of course, we've got some trolls who have jumped on over, which is funny. I always think it's funny when people comment on like racial slurs and things in the server. Mostly because it's just like, that's not offensive to me. Not in like a real way. Okay, so one sec. Oh, thank you, Cool Boy, for streaming the conversation, the stream. I really appreciate the hell out of that. Anyway, who's next? I try to get attention from one person, but I'm not sure if. Let me jump over to the waiting room real quick. Hey, did you get the connection with Strawberry? The Strawberry available?
You didn't text me who you wanted. I didn't know who you wanted.
Oh, okay. I thought, okay. I think
I didn't know who you wanted. I was gonna text you, but I was like,
oh, it's okay.
I don't know.
I'm gonna make a new. Okay. Organization. And we're gonna keep that channel just to make it easy. First of all, thank you everyone who is, willing to sit through this with me and be patient. I appreciate the hell out of that. Okay, put it this way: who right now in the waiting room do you know works, like their mic works and they are on the list?
The only
I know
person
my mic works
right now that has been speaking that is on the list is me.
Okay. All
Valkyrie. Right. No, wait. Actually, Valkyrie has spoken.
Okay, Valkyrie
has spoken today.
Okay, I'm gonna just
Valkyrie.
Okay, I've got to disconnect just to keep my sanity. Let me see. Valkyrie. Sorry, you guys. This is not going as smoothly as I would like. But I'm going to give Valkyrie the speaking role. Okay. Let's see. Valkyrie, do you hear me? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Oh no! I guess they're still trying to figure it out. We've got some really great people who want to call in, though. I know that Strawberry's a person who is great in the comment section. Let me see. Try to get Strawberry next if you can. Oh, Valkyrie, is your mic working? Everything working?
Yeah, my mic is working.
Okay, you might want to turn your mic down just a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just goes it's like peeing.
How about halfway?
I think that sounds good. All right. Okay. So, who am I speaking to and what is your true tea?
Hi, my name is Val, and my true tea is how I kind of been feeling on the fence about pretty privilege,
probably mostly mainly, especially because it's kind of a new concept for me. And I've only just recently heard about it a while ago. And I was like, huh, I don't know about that. And then, but never really gave it thought. And then after I heard your recent True Tea, video, I started thinking about it more. And I feel like consider calling it pretty privilege is kind of the wrong name to give it, because I feel like it might be more of it's more like biases and like opinions that affect other, like it's all the people's different biases, and it's overlapping and intertwines with other oppressions, like how with the when it comes to Eurocentric beauty standards, that when you get into that conversation and pretty privilege, that intertwines with racism and colorism, and those are more like biases around that. And sorry, hold on, let me look over my notes.
That's okay. I love that you have notes.
Yeah, I made sure I did, because I knew, like, I'm so much better with like thinking and like planning everything out, but when it comes to like on the spot, I'm so bad. But
okay.
like, especially with like how when it comes to colorism and the biases with how light-skinned people of color are treated better and given more opportunities than more like dark-skinned people of color, and that all intertwines with racism and colorism more. So I wouldn't really view or consider that or call that exactly as a privilege in a way. And also, I think that it's a very weird phrasing, and to be considering this a privilege, like it's the wrong word, because, and also I just feel really weird phrasing and describing people as more conventionally attractive or more pretty people as like a problematic or like a weird language phrasing. So it's gonna be very weird. This is like the first time I'm ever actually kind of like putting my thoughts about this together. So it just weirds me out going forward with having to phrase things like that, because it just feels really uncomfortable and problematic to consider people like that when people are just like, I've always just figured and considered people like everybody is beautiful in their own way, and also like, not to sound like cliche, but like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and everyone's beauty and attractiveness is different. So
yeah, I mean, to me, it just really, it's a very strange phrase, and I think you're kind of getting to maybe some of my like reaction to the phrasing of it as privilege, because what do you do with that? Yeah, like I was trying to say to the last caller, what do we do with this information, and how do we even describe it? Like, do you say, all right, you're pretty, you have to check your pretty privilege and XYZ, and this is how, I don't, like, what do we do with that? I guess, like, does it exist to some degree? Sure, but it's so hard for me, especially as a Black person, to disconnect it from other isms, really. Like, obviously Black folks have their own, often set of what they would consider to be attractive. Like what a lot of Black folks consider to be attractive isn't always what society at large considers to be attractive. So there's like something to that, but then even that is often colorism and other things, and it's just so hard for me to know really how to place this, because I don't know if privilege is the correct term. But I can't deny that something like that exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm coming at it from too, because when I've been thinking about it, especially with this call-in show, I can absolutely see people's perspective and where they're coming from and considering it, or at least trying to consider it as a privilege, or when they probably mean more of how the overlapping biases within different oppressions are intertwining, which is why intersectional feminism and anarcho-feminism are both very like the main major feminism that people should be viewing feminism through like those lenses as, because it acknowledges all the different intersectionality and overlapping of different oppressions. And it's not just like, hey, one oppression, you experience one oppression and that's it. Well, it's not like that. And I can see the disastrous effects of trying to fit in with the impossible toxic beauty standards of like trying to fit in through eating disorders, body dysmorphia from following all the magazines and everything, and the body shaming, and trying to copy the plastic surgery trends of like the Kardashians or other celebrity influencers, which all that also intersects and ties within misogyny, body shaming, and the toxic beauty standards as well. And of course, also throw in the fact that it's a lot of it is cultural appropriation, all the plastic surgery that Kim Kardashian and the Kardashians are doing. They're getting all these Brazilian butt lifts and these fillers in their lips and stuff to look more like Black women, and the racism that stems from that is that when it's all on Black women and even with their natural hair, it's considered to be looked down upon, but on a white woman, it's applauded, and it's just really messed up.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Is like there's the sort of God, what is the word I'm looking for? Like pretty privilege, right? Okay, like people like Kim Kardashian and Kylie Jenner essentially went and surgically enhanced themselves in order to sort of gain privilege, I guess you could say. And you know, I watched a really interesting video called by Kidology, and in that video, she talks about people who have had nose surgery specifically. It's kind of all about how society has kind of teach people to hate their nose. And quite a few people were able to go and have nose surgery, just nose surgery on its own, to kind of subvert a lot of their ethnic features. And through that, they were able to have upward mobility in society by essentially changing their features via surgery. They were able to have a better life. And so there's kind of something to that. But then, you know, when you look into that, to me, again, that's a lot of that is them trying to avoid racism, right? A lot of that is them really trying to, you know, circumvent the way that they would be othered racially because of the construction of their nose. And if pretty privilege is that, you know, getting a surgery, you know, in order to be privileged, I guess that doesn't necessarily sound like a privilege to me in a lot of ways. You know, it doesn't necessarily seem like, when I think of privilege, I don't think of person who got, you know, surgery in order to have upward mobility necessarily. I think systemic, right? So I'm kind of curious, you know, thinking about this term, how do you feel about pretty privilege as something that may or may not be like systemic? Because to me, that's usually like the outline of what a privilege is it's kind of related to some sort of system, and the system, you know, doesn't necessarily have a through line in terms of the way that it looks at beauty all the time. So I guess I'm always kind of curious, you know, what exactly we do with the term, if anything.
Yeah, I completely understand and agree with that. Like, I do believe it is applies within systemic as well, because of, again, I don't want to keep sounding like broken record, but of all the biases and the interwoven oppressions that all these beauty standards, especially is that Eurocentric beauty standards, and especially how like white women are supposed to be like the main go-to must be beauty standard to thrive for. And that all overlaps with misogyny, racism, colorism, sexism, transphobia, and classism. Throw in the caste system for women in India too as well, because that's another aspect that most people don't. So I feel like this is a lot of a more of a American-centric conversation too as well, because when you throw in the perspectives and experiences of women from other cultures like Muslim women or Indian women, African women, their experiences with this, and they're going to feel much more negative biases and less opportunities as well, because they are not going to be able to fit within the Eurocentric beauty standards that is set as the main to thrive for, because, well, obviously their natural beauty, which is something that they should feel beautiful with and love about themselves, and feel so confident, self-esteem in their body and their self, and look in the mirror and view and see themselves as absolutely beautiful, because they are just the way they are, because everybody, I feel like everybody being uniquely different makes them beautiful in their own ways, and trying to strive to all be these mirror image of, I don't want to be insulting, but like mirror image of basic like white girls is just kind of very boring. Like,
it is very boring, and you can kind of see like a lot of times the way that surgery goes, it's like they're pumping out the same exact person, you know, they're trying to make people look the same in many ways. It's a very specific look. So yeah, I guess it is also interesting to think in terms of beauty and how it's shifted, because, you know, like even looking at the plastic surgery trends, a lot of what is popular and trending now is going to be outdated in not even that long from now. Like people who got plastic surgery in the 80s often look kind of outdated just because of what the standards were back then. And it just, beauty shifts, what we value shifts. I think we've even though white beauty is definitely like the standard, I could definitely see people, you know, shifting into a more racially ambiguous kind of standard, which is very interesting. People who kind of like want to look like they may or may not have a Black relative. That's very interesting. And so I guess for me, that's even more proof that like it's not always a standard thing. But I agree with you that people, I think everyone has beauty in some way, shape, or form, you know. And it's hard for me to nail down beauty. So I suppose that's why it's hard for me to nail down pretty privilege. But on that note, I want to take the next call because I definitely have not been good at seeing how much time has gone, but I really appreciate you giving me your thoughts and for being patient while we went through all of the various technical difficulties. So thank you so much for calling in.
you're very welcome, and have a great night and evening.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Okay,
So I've been good this time. We've picked the second person to come on. I apologize yet again for the complex, messy way this is going, but I think we're picking up our steam. So let me give Phoenix the speaker role. Oh, they should have it. And Phoenix, whenever you're ready. Oh, there we go. Hi there. Who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
Hi, Kat. I'm Phoenix. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I love your show. I love everything about it. I always learn so much here, and I really hope that I can contribute a little bit to the conversation myself this time. So I'm a white trans man, just for context, and one of the things that I wanted to bring here was that I've had a major shift in how people perceive me attractiveness-wise from when I was a teenager and before transition to after transition, where I was like the stereotypical, like, overweight, acne riddled, giant glasses nerd stereotype from like the 90s. That was me for most of my life. And just extremely recently, with me being on HRT and my voice deepening and breaking out again, that's great. But, you know, it's like I've gotten to a point where I'm starting to wear makeup and be more, I guess, conscientious of how I look when I go out. And for that matter, I'm leaving the house now. So things have changed for me. And it's really been a shift from high school, where, you know, kids would ask me out as a joke or make fun of me, to actually hearing compliments for the first time in my life. So I feel like I've kind of lived both sides of the pretty privileged coin, I guess.
That's interesting. You're not the only trans masked person who said that in the comment section. That was a pretty, like, interesting comment for me to read. You know, people who through transition have shifted. So, and it's interesting too, because also a lot of time when we talk about pretty privilege, I mean, it's almost in the phrase. We don't often speak about men. We don't often talk about, you know, how it's so different for men. So I'm kind of curious if you could speak a bit more to that, because I guess sometimes when I think of pretty privilege, and especially the people who people often consider to be pretty, prettiness almost seems like this ritual you have to prepare, this thing you have to do. And one of the comments I got quite a bit in the comment section is that it's a lot easier for a man to be more attractive than it is for a woman to be seen as more attractive. So I'm kind of curious what you think about that.
I absolutely agree with that. And I found that this may sound odd, but before I knew I was trans, there was almost a sense of giving up. Like, I'll never be conventionally attractive. I'll never be beautiful. And then some years into my transition, I started to realize that I just wasn't pursuing the right kind of beauty for me, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, it does.
And it's completely bizarre to me, but I've been going out and trying to be cute and whatever. And the most bizarre thing to me has been my gravitation towards presenting masculine, but doing, I guess, traditionally feminine things. Like, I never thought that I'd wear makeup, but my acne has been so bad on testosterone that it's like, oh, well, let's try it. And going out to the bar, people who knew me were actually telling me that I looked more masculine with makeup, which I still don't quite know how I want to digest that, but it does feel good.
That is interesting.
It's very interesting. I suppose it's because I'm contouring with it, but on the one hand, I want to say, you know, thank you. That's very reaffirming for me. But on the other hand, I'm going, what do you mean I look more masculine? What are you saying to me right now?
Yeah.
So I 100% agree that it looks different as a man or as a trans masculine person. And another point that I wanted to bring in here, because I feel like it hasn't been brought up much, is that I actually haven't heard pretty privilege being used much to educate people, so much as to tear down certain groups of people, to say, oh, she's just using her body, she has pretty privilege, or to say, you know, oh, that person's not dating me because they have pretty privilege. I'm not attractive, therefore. And it seems so bizarre to me to hear it weaponized like that, where it kind of falls into, I suppose, that kind of like incel area where people are using it as an accusation of, you know, you're just stuck up, you're just superficial. And I feel like that's one of the areas where it gets extremely muddy, because it's not something that I feel like it's not something that should be a weapon. If it's going to be a conversation at all about privilege, you can't just use it as an insult and then expect that to lead to any kind of productive conversation.
Yeah, that's kind of like partially my big thing is like, so where is this conversation going? You know, and it's interesting you brought that up because I think one of the first times I saw the phrase pretty privilege was in reference to the rapper Sweetie, who is, you know, a performer who, you know, a lot of people really love her songs. They really love, you know, her thing, and she's absolutely gorgeous. But then a lot of her live shows are lacking, right? And so some people have said that Sweetie has pretty privilege because she's a gorgeous, you know, girl who doesn't do a lot of performance. And I guess, you know, part of the in the back of my mind was like, there might be something to that, but what is the point of this conversation? Is it to say that this person just has unfair advantage because of their attractiveness? Okay, I guess, but sometimes it does sort of seem a little bit like, you know, you're kind of trying to find an overly intellectualized way of tearing someone down, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. Because I'm sure that there are probably some productive conversations about pretty privilege, but you know, sometimes it just because there is something to be said about the halo effect. Like that's been studied, and yes, it's, you know, it's been scientifically proven and and that's that. But people often don't describe that as privilege necessarily. And I guess I've mostly only heard pretty privilege in a context, you know, on the internet where people are mostly criticizing women for using their appearance, you know, which to some degree I'm kind of like, well, we live in this like misogynistic society. I guess, you know, if there's one benefit that you can receive for being attractive, like, is that the worst thing in the world? But, you know, I don't know. I'm so curious, like, where the conversation goes, really, because it does sometimes sound a little, you know, it does often sound a little shitty. Like someone in the chat is saying, you know, that's a lot of times people are describing pretty privilege or referencing someone as having pretty privilege. It's also kind of an underhanded way to also question their intelligence, you know, and to me, a lot of that just kind of also seems, you know, especially because it mostly focuses on women, just like misogyny, right? Is this like an overly intellectualized misogyny thing? Like, I don't get it, you know?
It absolutely seems that way to me because from the experience that I have, people treat me better when I'm more conventionally attractive. That I won't deny. People compliment me more. People buy me drinks. You know, that happens. But when it butts up against things like my privilege for being white or my lack of privilege for being trans, it doesn't really push those in any one direction. I've noticed this change in how people treat me, but it hasn't gone as far as, you know, landing me jobs or I don't know, me being able to fly through school or anything. It hasn't overpowered the other labels that I suppose people read first.
Yeah, that's a good point because, like, yeah, maybe a person who is, you know, considered to be attractive may in some ways receive some privilege, you know, that allows them to have maybe a bit more than someone who is of the same group but not quite, you know, considered to be attractive. But like, I guess it doesn't really seem like that it really pushes it that far, you know, like you said, it's not as though being so conventionally attractive makes it so that you don't experience transphobia. You know, there are some really gorgeous transgender women who have experienced violence at the hands of trans misogynists, right? So
absolutely. And in some cases it's even used as a justification by horrible people going, oh well, she tricked me.
Yeah.
And that's disgusting. People.
Yeah, and you know, as you said that, I'm thinking, because unfortunately I do listen to and watch a lot of true crime things, and one of the things that they almost always, you know, bring up is, you know, she was gorgeous, she lit up the room, You know, she was the this and this and that. Everyone loved her and worshipped her beauty. Da 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 da. But then that thing is, you know, is often blamed for the reason they got murdered. You know, like, oh, this person had, you know, murdered them because he just couldn't help himself. And then there was that article that got posted recently about being canceled at 17, and the author described this boy, this teenager, sharing his, you know, photos of his underage partner, and one of the things that she said while defending him was that she was celestially beautiful. She was just so beautiful that of course he would share the nudes, right? And I guess it's hard for me, especially in a society with misogyny being what it is, to necessarily see being pretty, considered to be pretty, as a privilege in the same way white privilege would be. And I guess that's really where I struggle, you know?
Yeah, the conversation that has been coming about using just the term privilege has been, I think, a really wonderful conversation, because the biggest thing here is that, sure, people may treat you nicer, you may gain some benefits from being pretty, but there's a lot of drawbacks that come with it. And it's not just in violent crime, not just in murder cases, but you'll see, oh, well, she got assaulted because she wore that short dress. And all of it, anyone trying to use someone's appearance to justify something terrible happening to them. I mean, to then go around and say that, well, she was privileged, you know, it's very silly.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Well, thank you so much for calling. I have to take the next call, but I really appreciate you calling in and giving us that perspective, because it is definitely that the perspective of the trans guy who transitioned and then was seen as more attractive after it was a really common comment. And so I'm glad that you came to give voice to that. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Take care, and I'll be listening to the rest.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. So, one thing I want to quickly reiterate. I have to go pee really fast, but I'm going to try to be a bit better about keeping these calls short. I think the past couple of calls have been good, but I only had started using my timer in the last call. So just remember, everyone who calls in, think about, you know, it's a 10-minute limit. Also, for people who are wondering in the chat on YouTube how to join the call-in, I'm doing this through Discord. If you joined just seeing this particular stream, you got through the stream without the technical difficulties. But I think we've sorted everything out. We've got like a whole process now. So if you would like to call in, join us over on the Discord. I will repost the link right now. And I'm going to take a quick little bathroom break, literally a minute, probably less, and be right back. And we're going to speak to the next person. So Elliot, just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right. I feel lighter and brighter. All right. So let me drag Elliot over here. Hi there, Elliot. Are you able to hear me?
Oh, yes, I am. Let me turn down the stream.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Introduce yourself. Who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
I guess I'll go by Elliot. I'm from, can I say where I'm from? Or is that
go for it.
Yeah, so I'm like a Black boy from Metro Detroit area. I'm 20 now. I started watching you like 2 years ago when I was 18, and I'm gonna get to the topic. I just wanted to kind of have this little preamble because pretty much after I went through like this huge deconversion process from religion, I kind of wanted to think about, okay, like what does my future look like? And you set like a very positive example as like someone that's a Black atheist for me. Yeah, because I was like, well, what comes after that in my 20s, and with the whole art thing and you being into animation and just so that was why I started watching you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as far as like the whole pretty privilege thing goes, or I guess handsome privilege for guys, I don't think that it's like you said before, like it's as big of a problem as people make it, because at the end of the day, you have to show that you have intelligence and whatever like field of work you want to go into. It really seems like to me that on the internet, the whole pretty privilege like outcry really comes from people that maybe this might be a shitty thing to say, but I think it comes from people that know that they are unhappy with themselves, so they try to come up with like a intellectual term to explain in a way and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is that every person's dating preference is going to be, even though we're not allowed to openly talk about it, every person's dating preference is going to, I would argue, be like 100% based in prejudice, because you're thinking about like the future. Like I'm 20, so if I'm dating someone, I'm thinking about, okay, where are they going to be by the time I'm like 25 and in my late 20s? And because I am bisexual, it's kind of complicated for me when it comes to, like, let's say specifically the Black community, because the idea within the Black community is that, like, let's say as a Black man, if I don't basically, like, I'm not really into, I don't really feel attracted to darker skinned women.
No,
like,
here we go.
No. So like, but the thing is, wait, here's the thing though. It's like when I say that, they'll say that like I'm colorist or like I'm racist or I have like a self-hatred issue. But the thing is that when it comes to like the men that I prefer men that are darker skinned than me. So like I just feel like that, like for men that were able to I feel like that men are not able to be as open about their dating preferences the same way that women are. And I get that a lot of that comes from the fact that men do have, men do benefit from the system more. We don't live in a world that is absolutely equal around the sexes and the gender. Like that's just a fact, right? So I understand why people have that issue with Black men and whatnot. But I do also feel like that sometimes it's just a bit of a double standard. But I also have to acknowledge that as somebody who is dating, that if I'm, making these decisions and stuff, that I am as susceptible to criticism as the next person, basically. So it's like I don't know where that leaves me at though, but I don't know.
So here's the thing. I wrote a whole article about this, about dating preferences, and it's kind of interesting to me how often this comes up in this particular conversation, because I do think to some degree that they are pretty related, and for me, when it comes to like people's dating preferences, I do personally believe that dating is inherently an exclusionary thing. So, it's really not about necessarily, having dating preferences that are going to be, appropriate to voice out loud, because that's not, what it's about, really. It's kind of about who you choose to build your life with. So obviously, those are not always going to be the most inclusive of descriptions, right? But, it's funny to me because this does kind of reference something that is kind of at the center of what I'm talking about. You said that you don't find dark-skinned women attractive, but you do find dark-skinned men attractive. And what's interesting to me about that is that is a pretty common thought process around dark skin. For a lot of dark-skinned women, they are used to being seen as more masculine, more aggressive, And that has a history, that there's a reason
Yeah.
why, people feel that way. And with dating preferences, I think everyone can like what they want or have whatever preferences they want. And if you read the article, it's on my website, Blaque in the City, where I wrote pretty in depth about it. I believe it's called Desirability when you are the least when you're the least desired but always desired, I believe. And it's kind of about my own experience where, I accept that there are people who are not going to be attracted to me because of my skin tone or my race or my this or that. And as much as people may deny these preferences, people do indeed have them. But for me, even if I don't really believe in, always like, let's have these in-depth conversations where you have to, conclude that you find me attractive. I do think it's hard to separate those preferences from those isms, right? So I'm not surprised that you find dark-skinned men attractive, but not dark-skinned women, because that maps neatly onto colorism.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I meant as far as like checking my own biases, because if I'm being intellectually honest, I have to be honest about the fact that a huge part of like what I determine, or what I just not even determine, what I find to be attractive is definitely influenced by like the media that I've have grown up consuming. But when I check it with reality, I know that there are dark-skinned women that, like, if I met them, that we would get along well and everything else. Like, so like, how do I say, it's like a preference as far as who I will be with and who I want to like get with and whatnot. But I literally know that not every single dark-skinned woman is going to act a specific way, and not every single dark-skinned guy I'm going to be attracted to is going to act a specific way. It's simply like it doesn't work that way. But I don't know. When you say the ism, are you more so saying that it's attached to colorism, or are you saying like racism? Are you like insinuating both? Because I would say probably maybe both.
Well, yeah, I mean, because oftentimes whiteness, especially like light skin, especially amongst women, is seen as more feminine, more delicate.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a long history of that, across various cultures, right? If you have darker skin, that means you're out there in the field working and doing all these things. And if you have light skin, you've been able to have, be taken care of and provided for. You don't have to go out there and work like with all those dark skinned people. And that is such a part of our, the I would say collective trauma that a lot of Black people, especially in America, have, where there is this way in which a lot of Black folks attribute value and worth to lighter skin, and so go on.
But what I was gonna say though is that it gets odder with me, because so I have like that skin complexion like preference and whatnot, but the thing about it is that I also do not see myself settling down with anybody that is not like a person of color. So it's weird because like, so I have that preference as far, let's just specifically talk about a preference for women. Like I have that preference for women, but I simply do not see myself ever settling down and marrying like a woman that is Asian or that is Caucasian or that is Irish or like a different ethnic group. I feel like that she would have to be like, even if she is lighter skinned, she would have to be Black or Hispanic or so like some community that has overlapping experiences as a person of color, because I feel like that's the only type of woman that would be able to relate to my experience. Even if our skin complexions might be like brighter or whatever, they have people within their family that will be from a multitude of different skin complexions. So I completely understand that point, but I think that maybe that's it's I guess it's my own personal way of, I guess, making up for it, I guess. I don't know. But because I, like I said, like you said, dating preference is very personalized. Nobody is going to be 100% PC in how they date. Like it's literally impossible. You're going to waste people's times if you act like you're interested in dating every single group in the world. But like, as far as that skin complexion preference goes, I just like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a complicated thing for me. I don't know. It's not like I've never have had like crushes on women that would be considered like darker than me because I'm more like light skinned and they were more like chocolate like skin complexion. So it's not like it's never happened before. It has happened, but just in general, I skew towards the opposite direction. And like you said, I do think that it has to do with the fact that people do consider darker skin complexions to be more of a masculine trait. And actually, people have considered me to be softer, quote unquote, like before they will consider somebody like a darker skin, like black dude to be soft. They kind of like assume that about me. And I think some of that has to do with having a lighter skin complexion and the other shit is.
Yeah. Of course it does. I mean, if you look at like even black centered media, it's so common to see amongst heterosexual pairings, dark-skinned man, light-skinned woman, almost every time. Even if the woman is technically also dark-skinned, she's usually still lighter than the man. And to me, that's just a reflection of colorism. You know, whether it's
I didn't mean to cut. Did I cut you off? I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say because when you said that, something beamed in my head. There, you may or may have not heard of the series, but I'm sure you know the actor Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
There was this. There was this. He has this anime called Genlock, and he voices the main character who's darker skinned, and the love interest inside that program is this Caucasian woman, this a soldier like him, who is, you know, a white woman, auburn hair, whatever else. And I remember looking at people critique that series, and I remember seeing different conversations centered inside of centered inside of writing around interracial relationships, because for some reason you always see like black men with white women, but you very rarely see white men with darker skinned black women inside of like in media when you see interracial couples. It is very weird, and I think it literally has to do with like the elephant in the room, that like white women are supposed to be like the quote unquote best women. Like, not, I don't believe that, but I'm saying that's what society says. So, and as far as seeing that inside of media, when a black man has a white woman, it's supposed to be like, wow, he's really making it, or quote unquote, like that's what it's supposed to say. Whereas, like, if it's a white man, he's with a black woman, society is going to be like, wow, why are you with someone that's beneath you? So I think that that's literally where it comes from, and it even I think it even like affects like I said, like even animation, as far as media and as far as the examples of interracial dating that we do see inside of popular media.
Yeah.
You know, like yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all quite complicated. But on that note, we have gone a little bit over time, so I definitely want to take the next call. But I really thank you for calling in and giving me your perspective. I really appreciated it.
I really wanted to do this for like a long time, so thanks.
Aw,
thank you.
Thank you for supporting what I'm doing here. I appreciate it.
All right, have a nice one.
All right, bye-bye. First of all, not Tyler Perry. Y'all are killing me in the chat. Tyler Perry movies. They have me so messed up. So messed up. It's like, don't you be an educated black woman. Please don't be an educated black woman with dark skin, because you might not survive the plot. You know, high key. Obviously I have a bajillion things I could say to that, but you know, I appreciate when people call in and give me their true tea. Listen, that's what this is about, y'all. Let's just, before we move to the next call, that's what this is about. These thoughts are not always, you know, clear cut. These thoughts are not always appropriate. They're not always, I hate this phrasing, but PC, but they're real, you know? So you know what? Even if some things, you know, are bothering, you know, I do think sometimes having these conversations is helpful for everyone. And I will apologize to some people who are bothered by some of those comments, but you know, look, it's messy. None of this is easy. None of this is straightforward, you know? So I appreciate people coming and, you know, giving me their true tea, because that's what this is all about. Even if it's even if it's, a little bit messed up. But anyway, we've got the next caller. I'm going to drag them in here. Hopefully they are ready. Hello. Do you hear me, Samo2?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
So hey, I'm Maya, and here's my true tea. And I figured I'd sort of tell you my experiences rather than sort of like give you my analysis on pretty privilege, because I feel like my experiences speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a South Asian woman. I believe I'm someone who presents as a South Asian woman. I look South Asian, heavy emphasis over look, or quotations over look. And as a child, I sort of fit the stereotypical Indian child look. Long hair, brown skin, facial hair on my hands and my legs. And let me tell you something, kids are brutal.
Of course.
And they let you know that you are, quote, ugly. Like, they will let you know, even your friends. So hearing that at school, coming home to another brutal environment, a South Asian environment where it's, why are you so chubby? Why are you so fat? But, being simultaneously fed like 5 plates of white rice, everything being blamed on you. So as a child, I sort of became hyper aware of my looks. And I figured, because I was a non-white child, that it had to do with the fact that I'm brown. And I sort of came to this assumption that all non-white children feel unattractive. But when I came to middle school and high school, my world was like shook. It was completely shattered, because that wasn't the only thing. I found that there were stratifications even within, finding non-white women attractive. Who's more attractive than who? So, as an example, my sister and I, although we share some of the similar features, we are pretty different in that she was always skinnier than me, and she still continues to be skinnier than me. She is significantly more lighter skinned, and she has facial features that many people like to say, oh, but you don't look Indian. So, like being next to her and hearing the way people spoke to her versus the way people spoke to me was really eye-opening, but also devastating at the same time. Because not only was I having to acknowledge that, yeah, racism is a part, but now I'm introduced to colorism and to futurism. And it was, I don't know, like, it wasn't something I wanted to admit to myself, but because to me, like, unfortunately, I had this assumption that admitting to myself that futurism and colorism played a part in the way I was treated was also a way that I admitted to myself that I was less attractive than my sister. And I didn't want to admit that. So, I tried to deflect it, but it was in my face,
Yeah.
And comments like, oh, that's your sister? You guys don't look alike. And it wasn't just an observation. It was like sort of hinting at something. Or I would have never thought that was your sister. Oh, you're her sister? That kind of stuff. And like an incredulous look on their faces. And it sort of blew my mind. And I feel like it really made me jaded and edgy because of that, So while it was shocking, unfortunately, you were discussed, like, I was introduced to colorism, featurism, fat phobia. And of course, you believe that you would know that it takes a while to recover from that. I mean, I'm turning 20 in a few weeks, and I'm just coming to the self-awareness that, hey, like, people have said that to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're unattractive or you're ugly, that kind of stuff. But even with that, as I'm realizing, okay, I'm attracted to myself. There is a difference between considering myself attractive and understanding that I'm not desirable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I felt it firsthand. And that's something I've been dealing with these past few months. And I want to like, I try to like pat myself in the back, like it's okay to want to feel desirable to people because we've been conditioned to wax your legs or dye your hair or wear contact. You've been conditioned to want to be desirable to men, to white men, to this man, that man. And that's when I believe pretty privilege has a huge intersection with desirability politics. And speaking with people, particularly with Black women, I've spoken about how our features and our skin color, of course, with me, I don't face the same oppressions and as Black women, but I realized I do resonate with a lot of Black women when it comes to that my features and my skin color have sort of put me in this weird stratified order where I'm always second to last or last. And to explain that, I've been around men, non-white men especially, who have sort of like ranked the races they date, you know? So I have an East Asian friend who was like, oh, East Asian number 1. Number 2 is I would date maybe Hispanic girl. Number 3, maybe an Arab girl. Number 4, maybe a white girl. But absolutely number 5, number 6, a South Asian girl, like an Indian girl, you know, just putting all South Asia into India, and a Black woman. And that was with every single race category I heard. And that obviously that's foul. But that's something I noticed. And then that's when I spoke to a lot of non-white women, particularly darker skinned Black women, South Asian women, Southeast Asian women. And we spoke about how we're often always, when it comes to desirability, always on the last. And I feel like it had a lot to do with the fact that I looked Indian. I presented as Indian. My friend presented as a Black woman. And my other friend presented as a dark-skinned Southeast Asian woman. So I realized that while that was happening, there were also exceptions to this rule. I wouldn't really date a South Asian woman, but if she was this, and this, and this. So it was usually like how it was if she was light-skinned or if she was skinny or she was thick, you know, slim in the waist, fat in the ass, you know, that kind of stuff, then maybe I'd give her a chance. Like, keep in mind, they were 15, 16-year-old guys saying that. So it kind of like, you know, it's mind-boggling that people this young are perceiving these types of things and they're so comfortable spitting it out. And there were always exceptions. Well, if I was to date a Black girl, she'd have to look like this, but you know, like that one, no, not really. Well, I don't really find her attractive and they wouldn't want to say it out loud because they knew they were wrong, but they just didn't want to say it out loud. And I guess like, and to kind of encapsulate my whole experience, it was understanding while pretty privilege is a thing, in my opinion, I believe it's featureism, colorism, racism, all feeding into this one privilege. It has a lot of intersections with desirability politics and feeling desirable, feeling attractive enough for myself, but knowing that I'm not attractive enough for other people. And that's something that, unfortunately, I've just started to begin to work through because it's hard for me to, you know, sort of accept that maybe I'm not attractive enough for this population, this dating app, but it's okay to not be. But, you know, that's hard, especially when I've grown up in a society where I've had to teeter between the line of, as someone who comes from a religious Muslim family, that you have to be attractive, but not too attractive. And then going to a Western world where it's like, well, you have to do this and this and this to be attractive. It's just too much to work with. So I sort of separated myself, but even if I try to separate myself, it's still there.
You know, first of all, thank you for going off because I appreciated all of that, T, honestly. Like, you know, it's funny you mentioned the race ranking thing because I have straight up been on like dates with men and they've like told me that they have a preference for Asian women, white women, et cetera, like to my face, you know? And it's kind of one of those, you definitely get sometimes the impression that as a woman of color, you know, you just kind of have to like accept, you know, that kind of disrespect, you know? And for me, I also have the process of accepting that I might not be attractive to a lot of other people, but I like myself, you know, and that was a whole journey that I had to kind of go on, like understanding that there are a lot of things that people associate with beauty and attractiveness, and that there's some things that I could maybe change about myself to adhere more to that. And then there's a lot of things that I can't change and will not be able to change. And therefore, desirability for me is only, you know, so far. But I still think I'm bad, you know, like I still think I'm cute, you know, and I guess it's interesting because with what you're saying, I'm kind of recognizing why some people lean into the conversation of pretty privilege, because the impact that some people feel who are outside of that is very extreme. You have to kind of have those conversations with yourself about desirability in a society that like pressures you to be desirable all the time, to be attractive all the time in this one specific way. And so maybe the use of that conversation is to kind of draw attention to that. I actually think that what most people are describing as pretty privilege is, you know, more so what you're saying, desirability, you know, that conversation. For me, that always seems like it's a little bit more in line, because to me, that's exactly what we're talking about. You know, desirability politics are often about, you know, in what ways are you an approximation to, you know, the the beauty standard.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so different based on where you are. Like I know that South Asian beauty standards are a bit different than beauty standards in the States. You know, Korean beauty standards are different from South Asian beauty standards, you know, and it's just everyone has their own standard. But like a lot of times for the people who fall outside of that, it can feel very oppressive to live outside of that and to literally live you know, a harder life because you fall outside of that. So, you know, I'm curious, do you think it's useful to describe what we're talking about as a privilege?
I'm not sure. Do I believe they're like quote conventionally attractive people have more privileges than, I just hate the word non-conventionally attractive and conventionally attractive people. But do I believe that happens? Yeah, because I've lived it.
Yeah.
It sucked. And there is a privilege, but I think pretty privilege, unfortunately, has been used for so many things. We're kind of diluting the meaning of the reason why we even brought this conversation up. And what we have to do is dig deeper. And pretty privilege is not just, oh, like there's a pretty girl on the screen and she's getting more views than this girl because she's prettier. Yeah, maybe there is something that makes her more attractive than the other person, but we have to dig deep into what you consider attractive or what makes her more attractive than the other person. I believe while we can use this phrase to explain a lot of what is happening in our life, we can't just stop there.
Yeah.
We need to dig deeper into what fuels pretty privilege, what is very much heavily like aligned with pretty privilege, and how pretty privilege is just, in my opinion, unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to go. Because as someone mentioned, you know, standards of beauty change all the time. But I feel like the core of it all, Eurocentric beauty standards, it's going to take us a while for it to go. Because, I mean, in India, we only 60, 70 years ago, we've gotten our independence from Great Britain. And we're still very much struggling with trying to, you know, get rid of Eurocentric beauty standards. I mean, Fair and Lovely and bleaching, and then also like, oh, her nose is too fat, or she's too tall, or she's too short, or her hair is unruly, and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I feel like it's a process, and it's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of active unlearning, and unfortunately, I feel people steer away from unlearning because it reveals a lot of things about them that they don't want to hear.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Totally. Well, thank you so much for calling in. I must take the next call, but I really appreciate you giving me your brew as honest as it was. I really do.
Thank you.
All right. Woo, that was such a good call. So I will say the benefit of doing this all through Discord is I'm getting like a pretty good selection of different types of calls and things like that. because, I can sort of see what people want to talk about before they call in. So, this is going quite well. So let me drag the next person over. Let me see. All right. Hello, Naia, can you hear me? Or Naya? Or Nia? I don't know how to say it. Oh, hopefully they can hear me. Oh no. Oh shoot. Okay, I don't know if they can hear me now. Okay, well, let's see. 1 second. I guess they're not available right now. See, I would be all celebratory of the thing, and then it would not work out. Also, I want to say for people who are in the Discord right now, I am kind of going off of people who have written in the I want to call text chat and are also actively in the waiting room. So, oh wait, Nadia, are you there? Because I see you try to do a video thing, but I can't hear you. Oh, yeah, I can't see or hear you. Oh no. Well, I really want to hear from you. So, let me see. 1 second. Technical difficulties. Okay, so I don't think I can hear you right now. Oh, you know what? I just realized this person probably can't even respond to my thing. So, okay. Nadia, we're gonna have to we're gonna choose someone else, but try to troubleshoot that with oh, I just realized my mod is not in the chat anymore. That's probably why. That is probably why. Okay, so we are going to renegade this. We're going to figure this out as we go. I'm gonna disconnect you, Naia, because I cannot hear you. But let's try to do some tech stuff because I'd love to hear from you. Oh well, maybe let's see. Are they gonna rejoin? Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to drag someone else over because they said they were ready. All right. Here we go. Next call. Hello. Who am I speaking to and what is your true tea?
Hey, my name is Christian, and yeah, I was just going to talk about the prompt, I guess, for a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so my name is Christian, and I'm a college student. And yeah, I've noticed a lot of, I guess, hints of racism, especially in like dating and hookup culture in college. I'm about 20. I'm about out of here, and I'm about to have a job in a few. And I've just noticed a lot of colloquialisms, like, for example, like skater boy or golden retriever boy. I refer to like that. It's just like code word for white, in my opinion.
Really, golden retriever boy is code word for white?
I think so. I don't know if there are a lot of black golden retriever boys, or like, for example, e-boys. Like there are black e-boys, but I find that like that culture is pretty exclusive to white people, despite it becoming more diverse.
You know what's funny? When I think of golden retriever boyfriend, I don't remember his name exactly, but the guy who played in Shang-Chi, like the main character, because he for me gives very golden retriever energy. But that's usually just like a guy who's sort of silly, but also like very hot. I don't usually think that's so
Really?
interesting. I don't usually think white when I don't like say that, but when I think of like golden retriever boyfriend, I think like that kind of like silly guy who's also very attractive. But I get it. Maybe it is a code word for white. I'm not in college right now. It's been over a decade since I've been in college, so I don't know what the kids are saying these days.
Yeah, I think like when someone says golden, I'm a black guy, so when I think of golden retriever boy, I definitely don't think white people are talking about me. Like I don't think they're thinking of someone with dreads, for example.
Probably not.
Like yeah, I don't think they're thinking of that. I think, for example, like I think a lot of the racism and pretty privilege, especially from, and again, I'm speaking from women onto men. I mostly date women. In our culture, our porn, unfortunately, which almost everyone is consuming, and if someone says they aren't, they're lying. It's in a lot of our modeling, for example. I hear often from Black women, well, for example, like I'm done with Black men. It's really rare for me to hear someone say like I'm done with white men, and even the people who say that,
I say that all the
time. Are you done? Have you had enough?
I mean, yes, but I believe you because it's people often don't say that. But yeah, I mean, that's another topic. Let me not derail. But I hear what you're saying. Keep going.
No, but yeah, I often hear like, yeah, I'm done with Black men. It's very rare to hear someone say like, I'm done with white men. That just doesn't happen. I hear people say things like, I want a guy who wears flannel, and I'm like, oh, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? There's a lot of things like that, and I think you got on it. I think you say this: dating is inherently discriminatory. That's what I believe. But it's super hard to come to terms with that when you're young.
Of course,
I'm 20
absolutely.
now, but there's a time when I wasn't 20. There's a time when I was 15, like all of us, or 16. And when I heard things like that, as a guy, the things it did to my self-confidence, and especially as a guy, someone who's supposed to seem confident to be able to pick up women, God, it's hard. It's hard when like
there's a guy who I think thought I was attracted to him, which no offense, I definitely wasn't, who like had a whole conversation with me about how he doesn't find himself attracted to curvy Black women. And I was just kind of like, oh, that's so random because I wouldn't date you. And I'm sure many of my other curvy Black girlfriends wouldn't do that either. But what do you think's behind that? Like, cause that's very strange to me. Because to me, sometimes that seems like someone's trying to get you to pursue them or to like chase after them. And this was a white man, and I'm certainly not doing that for a white man. So I'm curious on, kind of why you think people say that. That's so weird to me for people to just like organically voice that. Like, who cares?
As a man, I'm just gonna say that's just men being comfortable with just blatantly and openly voicing their preferences, which men often do. It's so easy. Okay, for me, right? And probably for you. I guess you're a little older, so let's say I have a preference for Asian women, which I don't. I don't care about the race, but let's say I did. You know what I do? I just date Asian women. It's that easy.
Yeah, that's exactly
what other people do? They get on top of like the Chicago Towers and they scream, "I love Asian women." It's just weird. It's very strange. It's very weird vibes. You don't have to say that. You could just simply date Asian women or date Black women or white men even. But it's another thing when you vocalize that. It honestly gives me vibes of I'm not going to call it white supremacy because I feel like that kind of ruins the word, but it gives me vibes of like almost like white supremacy. It's like shouting out that you think all members of another race are unattractive or unfit to date you.
To me, it just sounds really egotistical. Like, who cares? Like, even if you were Jason Momoa and you straight up said to me, I don't find Black women attractive, I'd be like, wow, you really have a high opinion of yourself because who the fuck cares? Honestly, who the fuck cares? I will never understand that. I will never understand why people genuinely think that, who they find attractive and not attractive is like relevant conversation. Because listen, if I were to sit down and talk to y'all about what I find attractive, some people's feelings would be hurt. And you know what? That's true. That is what it is. But that's my own attractions, and I don't necessarily feel like I have to share it. And I feel like it's like egotistical too, you know, even if I was being pursued by someone outside of my, you know, attractions, I don't think I would say, you know what, actually, I'm only attracted to men who, you know, look like they could throw me across the room. And I'm so sorry, but you clearly can't do that. Like that just, I don't know.
You
You clearly can't. Like it just seems like that would
it's just out of pocket to say it. It's just
It
super
really
out of pocket.
is.
It's just too much. It's just doing the most. You can, I mean, yeah. For example, I guess, again, you could just date those kind of men or date those kind of women.
Absolutely.
But, people are very, very insistent on voicing their preferences. And I don't think people realize by voicing their preferences, they're also pushing their preferences.
Of course. And no one, in my opinion, is important enough for us to need that information. You know, I'm really curious because this is like the third time I think that dating preferences have come up in the conversation around pretty privilege, which to me, it's like these conversations do align in many ways, but it's so interesting to me how, you know, people immediately make that connection. Can you tell me a bit more about what you think the connection between pretty privilege is and maybe dating preferences is?
In a short answer, I would say everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
In what way?
I would say they're very much the same kind of thing. At least based on, I don't want to talk all about dating apps, but as I'm pretty sure you understand the dating apps, there's a lot of racial preferences and stuff that pop up. Tinder, these dating apps collect a lot of data and stuff. And it shows that a lot of, at least from my understanding, Asian, Latino, and white women least prefer Black men and Asian men. That's like one of the strongest statistics people point out all the time. Like Asian men and Black men are found largely unattractive. I think to be pretty as well, you can't call yourself. So that's part one. Part two is I think to be pretty, you can't call yourself pretty. It'd be like me calling myself a badass.
Yeah.
Someone else has to call me a badass for me to be a badass, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. How do you acknowledge your own pretty privilege without sounding like you're full of yourself, you know? Like, is there a way to talk about that? Like, yeah, I'm pretty privileged. Yeah, I'm hot or whatever. But like, you know.
No matter how you say it, I think it's a little cringe. It's like, you know, I have pretty privilege is the like intellectualization of saying I'm hot. Just say you're hot. Just say you're feeling cute. Just say you're looking cute. It's way better than saying I have some level of pretty privilege. Like I don't say all that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because like I kind of did that in the video, but mostly because I was acknowledging that there are for sure situations where I've used my appearance to get ahead. Like so much of my life is me finding a person who found me attractive so that I could survive, you know. That's something. So there's something there, but it's hard to like say that without sounding like, yeah, I'm cute or whatever, and therefore it's hard. So it's kind of like is there something to be said about the benefit? Sure, but like, how do you feel about the term privilege when it comes to these things? Like, obviously, in the context of dating, it sucks to have so many people say, you know, I don't prefer, you know, I don't prefer Black people or whatever.
Yeah.
But are white people who are preferred in that way, are they privileged because they're pretty, or are they privileged because they're white? Because in my experience, people who say shit like, oh yeah, I really find Asian women to be the most attractive, da 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 da. A lot of times those people are down for like almost any person who's Asian. Like, you know, like they're purely like racially fetishizing a person, and almost because of that, it doesn't even matter if the person's particularly attracted. They're predominantly into their race. So, you know, I just I don't know if I don't know. Does privilege apply here? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out.
I think okay, so I think that's a hard question. I think privilege. I don't think that's privilege. If you're an Asian, let's say you're an obese minority, or you're not even obese. Let's say you're a BBW minority. I'll just use the term BBW.
BBW, okay.
That gives you privileges. Actually, you're right. I'll backtrack. That gives you privileges in dating, but not necessarily in the real world. in the workplace, it's undoubtedly going to affect you negatively.
Mhm.
You're most likely going to be fetishized more than loved.
Mm.
And that's the thing I see with a lot of plus size women.
Of course.
That's not the same thing as actual, privilege. Like
Yeah.
like people treating you differently, like your world is just different because of the way you look. That happens mostly to skinny, conventionally attractive people. That's a privilege. The rest of that is just weird racial fetishization. I couldn't call that pretty privilege if you just really want to, almost like some men want to try like different flavors of women, in rap songs. I literally hear people say like, yeah, I got women in different flavors, different types.
That's cringe.
You're collecting Pokemon. You got to catch them all. It's not like that.
That's an interesting distinction, because I like one of the responses to me referencing what I think is my own pretty privileged cringe to say that out loud, but let's just say it. It was people saying, there is kind of a difference between you being considered pretty and also you being fetishized and maybe people pursuing you for that reason. I don't necessarily fold those two things into each other. But I'm sure that they do relate. Like for me, you referenced that research study that people did forever ago about which racial groups are attractive or more or less attractive between men and women. And Black women in that study came out as the least attractive of all women, considered by many. But for me, I guess, like, I can understand that systemically. I definitely can understand systemically why Black women would be seen the least attractive. And we had a previous caller say that some men have even directly said that to their face, right?
They will say that.
They will.
I am a man. I can say that men do say that.
Yeah. But I guess for me, it's like when I look at my dating life, it's like I not anymore because I'm all like primary partnered and shit now. But like back in the day when I was doing a lot of dating, I never really struggled to find people. So I guess it's very interesting to me to like read those statistics and then think of my own experiences, because it's not necessarily like if the amount of dates that I was offered and went on, etc., is the experience of someone of dramatically less privilege, I can only imagine what it would be like if I were a white girl, right? Because
I think it's different though, and I think it's like I have a lot of Black friends too, and a lot of them go on a lot of dates, but I think there's differences in people who are like dating you and going on lots of dates. I think that women in general have a lot of access to sex because every man wants to have. I mean, most men want to have sex.
It's abundant and low value. Yeah.
If you want to talk about pretty privilege, I think there's a baseline of pretty privilege that comes with being a woman. All other privileges, not so much, but pretty privilege, yes. There's a baseline of attractiveness that just comes with being a woman.
I guess. Go on.
Yeah, any kind of woman of most sizes, of most appearances, given that they are of a certain age range, kind of have that.
Well, see, that's the thing about it too. Certain age range. Like when I think of privilege, I don't necessarily think there's an expiration date on it, So I guess it's like desirability. Like I think because there are a lot of men who are very interested in, maybe taking a woman on a date and getting her to, trip and fall into their bed. There are probably always going to be like an endless amount of men who are, interested in taking out almost any woman, honestly. But I don't know, like, is that a privilege? I don't know. Cause going back to the dating app thing, I know from the conversations I've had with men that, and I didn't know this for a long time, men on dating apps do not get very many matches. Like men on dating apps will get maybe like 3 a week, whereas on our side, I can't even, I could not tell you every match I've ever gotten because I get so many.
Am I allowed to read the chat? Is that a thing I'm supposed to be doing?
I mean, not only if it keeps you on, but I will say we're a bit over time, but go on.
Okay. I do want to clarify, I'm not an incel, and I think what you said is kind of what I'm getting at. I'm not saying men wanting to have sex with you is a privilege. That's not what I'm saying. I just think as a woman, as you said, you had access to sex, but that's not the same thing as access to love. And
That
that's what's
very
obviously
true.
most
Very
important.
true. Very
As
true.
a man, it's like your access to sex is more selective. Like, I mean, you'll have sex, but it's much more rare. As a woman, if you really wanted to and you wanted to push yourself, you could have sex all the time. But who wants to do that, you know?
I mean, that's the thing that I always find so funny. It's like sex is so accessible to me that it's funny when a man thinks that that his penis is worth my dignity. You know, like, I'm sorry, I have a selection I could choose from. I'm not going to choose the random guy who doesn't respect me. Sorry about it. But anyway, we are definitely over time, so I have to take the next call. But I appreciate the hell out of you calling in and giving me your true tea. Like I said, I love when people are just honest and say what they say. So don't feel like you have to, correct yourself and all that stuff, because that's what we're here for, true tea. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me on. Big fan of what you do.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for everything you do for the community.
Oh, I really appreciate that. All right. Bye. All right. So I'm ready for the next call. I will say I'm probably only going to take maybe 2 more calls because we're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes on this call. So I'm going to be very selective. See, this is great because usually towards the end of the show, I would be struggling to, get through to people. But now I can kind of I know all the people that are, what they're calling about and things like that. So it's a lot easier for me to sort through it all. So I'm just going to drag the next person over. Hello there, Bulgna? Bulgna. I don't know how to say it. But can you hear me? Oh, if you're speaking, I cannot hear you. Oh no. Oh no. I can't hear you, GNA, if you're speaking. Okay, for now, let me see. What was that? That was terrifying. Oh, no, I can't hear you. Okay. Hello? Oh, I hear something.
Hey.
There you are. There you are. Hi, who am I speaking to and what is your true tea?
Hey, Nate. First of all, I'm from Brazil. English isn't really my native language, and it may come off as kind of broken. So sorry.
Oh, well, you're doing great right now. So far, so good.
You can interrupt me if you don't get something I'm saying. So I'm asexual, and I didn't always knew that when we. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous.
That's okay.
I didn't always knew that, and I kind of dabbled in some dating, men specifically. But the thing is, when we talk we talked about a lot about dating and sex and love in here. But I think beauty kind of transcends that. I have a lot of aesthetic attraction towards men specifically, but I don't want to date them or have sex with them. And I think privilege is kind of a misdirection of what we used to say, because pretty people isn't exactly a group. Like, you can't ever define, oh, these are all of the people that are considered pretty. Even people who are conventionally attractive don't always meet the criteria for everyone. But there's no situation where I'm not Black or not perceived as for other people, and there's no situation where you're not a woman or you're not perceived or you're not perceived as Black or transgender, or there's a lot of you can define all those groups. You can define able-bodied people, white people, but you can really get pretty as a group. It's not a societal thing. It's more of perks. And if someone is not treating you well because of your skin or of your gender, that's kind of just bigotry. It's not like there's a system of oppressing ugly people. It's more that oppression weaponizes beauty and turns the oppressed into the ugly ones. And that comes with the whole lot of cons and pros we talked about here today. So, yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting way of thinking of that. Oppression weaponizes beauty. That's a good reframing of it, because I think that might be the missing piece, because yeah, like it like it does feel like you're experiencing oppression to be outside of what people consider to be attractive, but is it necessarily, you know, is it necessarily those people and these ideas, or is it oppression weaponizing beauty, as you say? I'm actually really, 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 really curious to hear, especially as a person in Brazil, how this materializes in Brazil, because to my understanding, Brazil is very racially diverse, mixed, and there's, a lot of other layers of isms that are connected to that. And so in Brazil, what's considered beautiful in Brazil? I think I remember reading a comment from someone in Brazil, and they mentioned something about I think it was called rich girl hair. And rich girl hair is like always blonde. It's kind of like always kind of reaching towards that proximity to whiteness. So I'm kind of curious if you could speak a bit more about that.
I feel like definitely it has a lot of racism involved. People often think that because we are not in the US and we are a pretty racially diverse country, we don't experience racism as much for some reason. But whiteness plays a huge factor on what's considered beautiful. But what's close to Blackness, on the other hand, is really sexualized, over sexualized even. Black people in Brazil are really, really sexualized, both women and men. There's a lot of fetishism going on, and there's a lot of traces that are considered beautiful, but Black traits, but are considered beautiful, but more so if they are on a white person, like full lips, big butts, being thick in general. So the white beauty is more romanticized, and it's seen as this pure thing, what is essentially the norm. But Black, in quotations, beauty is always valued, but in a exploitative way, in a fetishized way. And while we are really, really, really diverse, you always see white people being the center of everything in media here. Like, we are a majority Black or mixed country, but you don't see that reflected in media. I think the percentages might be a little outdated, but like 60% of Black/mixed people here in Brazil, and we're not even close to 20% of representation in media.
Oh, wow.
So I actually was really surprised when I discovered that in the US, Black people are a literal minority. Like, in the numerical sense. But, well, the country has a lot of this problem, and I think class plays a really great factor in it. So a lot of what's ghetto, let's just say, or tied to poverty and blackness too, because the two are kind of linked here, is really shunned and outcast until white people get it, and suddenly is glamorous or trendy. Funk is a great example. It was a style of music that was predominantly black up until I don't know, the 2000s, 60s, and then it started catching up with white folks, and it got popular, and now it's a hallmark of our culture. But the more successful funk artists here are white people, basically. So black is ugly and repulsive until white takes it in kind of every sense of the world.
So it's kind of similar to America in that way. Well, United States of America in that way. That is terrible, because like a lot of, it's interesting because one of the thoughts I had in the back of my head as we were talking about, all of this stuff, especially in the last call when I talked about, fetishism or, attraction, is, a lot of times white features are kind of seen as universal, open to interpretation, open to shifting and understanding. But black features are specifically seen as sexual, hypersexual. If you have these things, this means you are a sexual person. And so it is kind of interesting to think about, like, especially the way that colonization has influenced a lot of these ideas. And something else I've been thinking about is, even when we try to extract the conversation of pretty privilege from racism, right? A lot of times, like, regardless of where you are in the country, or in the world rather, a lot of times that will still in some way relate back to colonization. Like, even when we talk about Korea, I keep bringing up Korea because I'm a K-pop stan, like Korea's history with Japan, it's not a coincidence that a lot of these Korean beauty standards look very close to what Japanese beauty standards would be. And I think that it's still so hard to disconnect these things from each other, even when we talk about it in an international context. You know what I mean?
Yes. I think beauty is one of those things that kind of ties in all of this. This is why I don't think pretty privilege really exists, because it's just intersectionality, basically. It's just how can I forgot the word, sorry.
No, you're doing amazing.
It's just the sum of all of those things pressing through colonization that came here and shuns all of the marginalized groups, basically, from, and especially racialized groups, from the even possibility of beauty, like it's like you're inherently incapable of fully achieving beauty, even if you're a conventionally attractive black person or fat person,
And how does that not relate back to, colonization? It's like it's still in a way like all connected. So yeah, I even though I still have unfinished thoughts, I'm glad that we were able to talk about this stuff, because it to me, I still kind of think it's not exactly as easy to nail down.
I don't think really it's a privilege per se, but it exists, but not in the way we talk about it. in relation to other oppressions.
Yeah. All right, I think I'm going to take the next call, but I really appreciate you calling in. How do you say your username? Because I was fucking it up earlier.
I often say Bogna.
Okay.
But I didn't even say my name. I'm Nick. Sorry.
Okay. Bogna, thank you so much for calling in. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So earlier we had one caller try to call in and they were not able to get through. And I think what I'm going to do is end on this particular call because I think that we've got a lot of really great calls and hopefully this one will work this time. So one more time. Naya, can you hear me? Oh no. Ooh, I see things changing. Oh no. I can't hear you if you're speaking. Oh no. My moderator disappeared, so we weren't able to do tech checks before. Oh, I really want to hear from you. I especially love hearing about this from people who are not in the US because it's such a different conversation internationally, I think. But I don't think I'm going to be able to hear Naya. Oh. Let's see. Fingers crossed. I'm bummed. Okay. Well. I can't hear you at all. Wait, let me try to type in general. Because I don't know if Naya can hear me. Dang technical difficulties. We've been here. We've been here for almost exactly 2 hours. Okay, so is it? Let me look at this. Did I not give? Okay, no, they have the speaker role. Wonder what that's about. Aw, okay, so let me go through and choose the last person. So I think there's actually only one person currently in the waiting room that has written in the I want to call portion of the server. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to just see if they are available. Oh, it's okay. It's okay, Naya. I know that it is technical difficulties. We had them earlier today. I'm really sorry. It's okay. Okay, let me see. Also, people were laughing at me for my typing. It's because I have like a tactile keyboard because I like that. I prefer that. All right, so I'm gonna bring in the last caller, and then hello, who am I speaking to, and what is your true tea?
Hi, you can call me Chip, and I'm a non-binary Muslim gay person, and the sort of introduction that I had to this kind of conversation was very incel-y in my experience. Very much like at least coming from men, a lot of it was regurgitated talking points about like being out of their league type thing, and like them being unable to ever achieve or reach that sort of standard. But then there's sort of a weird intersection that I found with my own experience in the gay community. So I'm an Arab, and so I'm very hairy. Like I have hair all over my arms and my legs, and there's this sort of standard in the gay community of this like skinny, white, hairless twink that I very clearly don't mesh with at all. And my sort of experience there was like, is it a privilege to be that, or is it just whiteness?
Yeah.
And I think the conclusion I came to was it's not really a privilege, it's more just assimilation into patriarchal white supremacist beauty standards to try and achieve some sort of benefit from those systems of power, even as people are being oppressed by them. I don't think it really meshes well with definitions of privilege as much as it does assimilation, because like people talked about earlier in the stream, there are disadvantages to trying to match those beauty standards.
Yeah, to me, like a lot of those beauty standards are unattainable for certain people. You know, like
Absolutely.
my primary partner is Palestinian, and he is very hairy. And if he were to shave like the day before, like if he was shaved tonight, he would have it all back like by the end of the day. You know, like it's unattainable. So like adhering to that standard is just not possible. You know, and I guess, yeah, like to me, it just like a lot of times, I mean, obviously beauty is not always necessarily a proximity to whiteness, but I think especially in the States, it tends to kind of be that, you know?
For sure. And I think when you talk about beauty standards specifically, especially in the States, a lot of it is attempting to approximate whiteness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's why I say like assimilation makes more sense here, because there is less of like a privilege to being conventionally attractive. And especially like you said, a lot of it is just fully unattainable for most people. It takes a lot of work to maintain that sort of image as like an attractive person. It's not the default, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I also wanted to talk about this because I'm also a K-pop stan. The way that intersects with K-pop and sort of, because K-pop is a like hyper-capitalist microcosm. Almost.
Absolutely.
In that like the people who get contracts and the people who become idols have enough money to pay for training, have enough money to get an audition at all, and then have to be attractive enough or have to be able to afford to get the work done to become attractive enough to play certain roles within the K-pop industry.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing too. It's like one of the aspects of this we haven't necessarily spoken about is classism. Like one comment that was in the video, the comment section, was a lot of people also tend to not get that a lot of what we would interpret as someone being attractive is relating to people who from a very young age were often in a situation where they were able to be well nourished, they had access to, you know, a safe home where they were able to, you know, develop in a way that a lot of people would associate with an attractive person. And class does indeed play a part in a role in that. And, you know, especially when it comes to K-pop, trainees and things like that, when you look into like the background of a lot of these people, a lot of idols, it really is like, oh, this person was really rich, and that means that they were able
Right.
to, you know, get training very early on. You know, they could forego even going to school or things like that because they were able to afford tutors or this or this or that. And sometimes the people who do indeed raise to the top are people who come from money and have the ability to, you know, put time aside to, you know, become an idol. And a lot of idols are literally not people who came from, you know, complete poverty and somehow pulled themselves up to, you know, the riches that they currently have. You know, and people often kind of forget that aspect of it, and how much of that is someone just being pretty and how much of it is them having the resources. And again, if we unpack this stuff, doesn't it still seem to relate to isms, you know?
For sure. There is a really great video on the classism of the K-pop industry by a YouTuber named Grace Grims. She typically does like dance videos, but she did a like YouTube essay style analysis of the K-pop industry and like income and especially like the living conditions of K-pop idols, and found that most of them end up, like, even if they don't start out in poverty, a lot of them end up in poverty because of the cost of becoming a K-pop idol.
Yeah, because it is also expensive. Like a lot of people can't afford to become K-pop idols, and a lot of, you know, people that I've looked into that have been in really exploitative situations are sometimes people who quite literally can't afford it and sign into these contracts that are, you know, exploitative because that's the situation they're in. They have to sell their image, they have to do this, they have to do that because, you know, they often don't have another option. And, you know, is the K-pop industry, like you said, is like a hyper capitalist like hellscape, frankly, just because of how much it's, you know, it relates to that. Like there are people who like for example, even though this is a great example of a person who comes from money, like Somi is like probably anorexic, but
Yeah,
it's
there's
concerning, but it's very much like, you know, the expectation that she's under to remain this thin, to look this way, to be just like this, and to also present it as though, you know, this is kind of the norm and I don't have to do anything and there's nothing, you know, wrong with me or da 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 da. And it is kind of in many ways feeding like kind of a toxic sort of standard where, you know, people are kind of made to feel as though if they don't do this, if they don't eat that, if they, you know, that they're not good enough. You know, and I guess,
and I think to go not fully off topic, because I think this is still within the purview of the conversation, there's a lot of imitation of Blackness and Black culture in the K-pop industry. You've talked a lot about this on your Twitter, I've seen, but a lot of it, and someone mentioned this before, a lot of it seems like Blackness and things that are like culturally identified as Black aren't acceptable when Black people do them, but when white people do them, or in Korea, when Korean people do them, it's viewed as like trendy or cool, or you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's that I think kind of ties into what the previous caller was saying, where like Black features are often seen as exotic or interesting or, you know, edgy on non-Black people, and that's a huge thing, you know, in so many cultures, you know, for Blackness to be simultaneously unattractive but also, you know, exotic and defining of culture. And it is kind of, you know, especially when you think of Korean celebrities and things, there are a lot of people who kind of in some ways mimic Blackness or do things that are frequently associated with Blackness, and it kind of becomes their character. And it's okay because this person, you know, in a lot of situations still, you know, either adheres to Korean standards or is closer than a Black person would be. You know, so it's kind of it is really interesting to think about how certain things are seen as attractive, you know, when they are not on a Black person. You know,
I think our experience of the K-pop community is a little different because I started out. I'm younger than you, so I started out as a BTS stan.
Oh no!
And I know you started out as a girl group stan longer
Definitely.
time ago.
Damn, I'm not that much older. You said you're Asian.
Looking back at like BTS's debut and like the outfits, RM's hair. I don't know if people in chat have seen this, but look up BTS debut RM hair. It's just an afro, and it's not. It doesn't look right. It doesn't mesh well at all, and it's very obviously imitating this sort of like Black gangster rap vibe.
Yeah. It definitely it quite frequently appears in you know, K-pop stuff. Like it's odd. Like Lisa is someone who's always very questionable because like, you know, there are moments where I'm like, okay, girl, okay, like I see what you're doing with your hair, and you know, cringe.
And I think sometimes with a little bit of Orientalism and appropriation of Middle Eastern cultures as well, I've seen.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing. I mean, it's interesting to think about, you know, how culturally, like K-pop is becoming international. It is an international thing, but it hasn't always been. And so, you know, there are some situations where people can claim cultural ignorance, but in so many ways, like, you know, people know, some people know for a fact what they're doing. And I do occasionally question if things are done to get, you know, attention, because clout. Sometimes I look at people and I'm like, okay, there's no, at this point in the game, there's no way people don't know that having a certain hairstyle, you know, a hairstyle associated with Blackness, is going to cause controversy. You know, like I know Lisa, for example, apologized for the way that her hair was because apparently it wasn't what she didn't do it. But I think people at some point they got to know. You know, they got to know that like this is going to cause certain people to have a certain reaction. Like it's not, you know, ignorance. I think that there are certain people that are very aware of the fact that Black features on a non-Black person gets them a certain degree of, you know, clout, attention, controversy.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not exactly sure on where I stand with this particular situation. There was, oh gosh, back in like 2019, I think, there was a music video by the group ATEEZ, and their leader, Hongjung, had dreads, like blue dreads, in one of the scenes. And after the video dropped and fans sent like complaints to the company saying like, hey, this is cultural appropriation, Hongjung made like a statement saying like, I didn't know about any of this, and I'm taking classes to learn about cultural appropriation and the history of Black cultural appropriation. And I guess I want to know what your take is on that. Is that like still, because obviously it's a PR move, but is that still like, are we to assume that he actually didn't know about that stuff, or is there genuine like room for learning for him there?
I mean, I'm not going to say that everyone's going to be aware of all things at all times, but I do know that this is a conversation some people do indeed have within, you know, K-pop music labels about like, hey, let's not do that. Like people do indeed take those steps to be more culturally sensitive. You know, to me, I have a hard time buying the ignorance because it's at this
For sure.
point, I get it. If 10 years ago, I could kind of get it, but now it's definitely not, you know, I don't think it's a secret anymore. So I think sometimes things are done like these people know that when they're putting in dreadlocks into someone's hair, that they're trying to do it for an edgy, you know, thing. Like they know that's what that's
And that
what
was
they're
definitely
doing.
the context. Yeah.
They know, like you're not going to see a K-pop, you know, a K-pop idol with dreads in like a song where they're supposed to be romantic or sensitive or lighthearted. You will probably only ever see it when they're trying to be a badass. And there's a reason why that hairstyle is associated with being edgy and strong and, you know, different for people who are not Black. Whereas for people who are Black, it's seen as a style that people do to maintain their hair, to reflect their often religious connection to, you know, Rastafarianism and things like that. And sometimes it's literally just something that for a lot of people is the best thing they can physically do with their hair texture. Personally, when it comes to like people doing it, you know, I'm of the opinion that that's your fucking scalp, you know, that those are your edges. You know, if you want to do all that, then hey, go for it.
Right.
But people definitely at this point know, I think, like what's what. So I don't necessarily you know, buy that people just don't know at this point, at least. So to me it kind of sounds like a bit of, you know, to me it sounds like a PR move more than a genuine expression of, you know, oh, I've learned and I've changed and I've grown, you know.
Agreed. Yeah. I think especially I think we're about at time.
Yeah, we definitely are. But I do appreciate you calling in and talking to me about this. I've referenced K-pop all throughout the call-in show, so thank you for continuing the trend with me. But yes, I do think we've been here for 17 minutes, so definitely over time. Right. But thank you so much for calling and for waiting patiently for your turn.
Of course,
I appreciate it.
Have a nice night.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. First of all, thank you for everyone who's been here the whole time. I know some of y'all have been here the whole time. Thank you to my moderators, Nail in the Fashion, JoJo, who is the new moderator because I recognize them as a regular. Thank you so much. For everyone who is in the Discord server right now, I'm about to lock the Discord server down. So I'm going to give y'all till the end of this broadcast to like say your hellos, your goodbyes, your connecting to the basically what's going to happen is I'm probably going to maintain this Discord, but you're only really going to be able to speak in it, you know, when, you know, we do these live streams. Because obviously, you know, one of the main reasons why I don't want to have a, Discord server is because it often ends up with people, you know, just trolling, and that's just, you know, annoying and unnecessary. So I know that that's how it's going to be, and I know that I'm also not going to be checking up on this Discord server outside of these scheduled call-in shows. But for those of you guys who do want to be in the next call-in show, definitely jump over to the Discord. I will post the link in the chat right now for those of you guys who are not on there. I do have it scheduled. Like I have events listed on the Discord. Oh, where did they go? Well, I'll fix it. Basically, the way that this is going to happen is I will post a True Tea episode on Saturday, on the first Saturday of every month. And then the following Wednesday is when the call-in show will be. So, you know, if you are a person who, you know, wants to call in, jump on over to the Discord server. There will be an event listed for the call-in show that will, you know, of course, keep you connected when it is time to call in. And yeah, that's probably the best way to be reminded. We do it at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I think that's 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm not great at time zones, but 9:30 PST, the Wednesday after the True Tea episode goes up. And I believe I already have the topic for the next episode, and it's going to be a spicy one. So I'm excited to have it. So on that note, the call-in show has already been unlisted, so there's no new people. We have 207 people listening right now to this stream. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for being on here, for listening in. I appreciate the hell out of you. You're awesome. And I'm going to post the full well, first of all, everyone, if you want, if you are in the chat right now and you want to go back and listen to this full show later, copy the URL right now. Copy it right now, because I am going, like I said, it's unlisted, so you're not going to be able to have access to this. And I'm going to post it on my Patreon for all the archives. That's where I've got all of the chats, the call-in shows archived. So yeah, almost at that. So I'm just now shutting down the chat, so no one should be able to chat anymore. And we've got auto delete on there, so all the messages will be removed. So yeah, anyway, just jump on over to the Discord server for next time. And until then, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.